Hi everyone, welcome again to Geography 101, Physical Geography. This video will serve as a short introduction to the syllabus and to geography in general. So again, who am I? Hopefully you've watched that short video introducing myself, but my name is Jamie Rossiter. I am available via email. Given that this is an online course, I will respond to emails fairly quickly, usually within 24 hours. Unless it's on the weekend, and then I will get back to you on Monday morning. I'm also available on Mondays from 12 to 1 p.m. on Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts, if you have a Gmail account, you're already signed up for Google Hangouts. If you don't, you can sign up for Google Hangouts with any email address. You just have to go to hangouts.google.com, and you could put in any email address and log in there. And you can find me at my email address, which is jrossiter@sdccd.edu. So I will be there on Mondays from 12 to 1, or in general, you could also make an appointment to have an online chat with me there. I'm also available to meet on campus for the first half of the semester, and for the second half of the semester I won't be able to. But I will certainly be available via email. And so what is this class that you are taking? For our course description, we have this course examines the major world patterns of the physical environment. The course covers the fundamental information and processes dealing with the Earth's atmosphere, climate, landforms, natural vegetation, water, and soils, along with appropriate use of maps and charts. And we are certainly going to look at lots of maps and charts this short semester. Here's a map on the right that shows different climate zones that we have globally, and we're going to look at a lot of maps like that. We're going to talk about the atmosphere and climate and landforms and vegetation. Lots of material to cover in this very, very short summer semester. Your required text is McKnight's Physical Geography, the 12th edition. The 11th edition is fine. Not a lot changes in the physical geography textbooks from one to another. The chapters still line up. You're expected to read the chapter along with the module. So on your syllabus, on your course schedule, it'll say what chapters we are covering that week, and we will cover 2 to 3 chapters a week, given the short amount of time we have together. So you're going to want to be reading along with that textbook. And you're going to want to be really familiar with Blackboard. You're already on Blackboard if you are here listening to this lecture, but you're going to want to know your way around Blackboard. If you are having trouble with a specific thing that I have posted, then I am the person to contact. If you are having general trouble with Blackboard, you're not sure how to do something, or you're having trouble accessing some things, you're going to want to contact your student technical support, and there is a link to that on the home page. And so your course homepage should look like this, with a little bit of a welcome. There's an introduction start here, which is where you are right now, a copy of your syllabus, and then modules, which I'll talk about in a second. But then you see student orientation and tutorials, and below that there's some ways to access the Help Center. But those student orientation and tutorials, those are general campus information. Those are ways to help you become more familiar with Blackboard if you are not already. And so each one of our weeks is divided into one module. So we have 8 weeks, we have 8 modules. Modules become available on midnight on Sunday, and you have until midnight the following Sunday to complete that, with the exception of the last module, which is due on Saturday. Just to go back for a second, you should open up the module and complete it in order. You should click on each consecutive item. That's how they are meant to be completed. You're not allowed to work ahead in this class. We're actually not allowed to let you work ahead. That would be a correspondence course, which we are not. You need to complete the class in order at the same pace as the rest of the class. So what are you graded on? What is your coursework for the semester? You have 8 quizzes that are worth 15 points each. In these short summer classes, rather than give you multiple exams in physical geography, what I do is each module, I just quiz you at the end of the module. So while we are kind of building on material, at the end of that module, you're going to take a quiz on what you just learned. And so there's 8 of those, 1 for each module. Those are worth 15 points. You have a variety of exercises. There are 18 of them in total. These are things where either it's a discussion post or I've asked you to answer a short question, do some research on your own. Those are worth 10 points each for a total of 180 points. And then you have a final survey, which is worth 10 points. In the last module, there is an anonymous survey that I ask you to complete as a way for me to improve the course in the future. And in the first module, you're going to take a plagiarism quiz. The very first part of the first module, we're going to just kind of do a nice refresher about what plagiarism is, why not to do it. And this quiz you can actually take up to 3 times to improve your score. So it's really meant as a learning exercise. There's no final paper or final project in this class. 8 weeks with physical geography is really not enough time to kind of formulate that final project. So that gives you a total of 325 points for our very short semester together. Late assignments, I do accept late assignments. You are deducted 10% per day for lateness, and after 1 week assignments will no longer be accepted. You actually won't even be able to access the assignment after 1 week. The exception to this is the final module. The final module is due on the last day, and I cannot accept any work after the last day of the semester. Special accommodations, I won't read this entire thing here. It's also available on the syllabus, but basically if you have some special accommodations through student services, please email me that documentation as soon as possible so that way I can give you your accommodations in Blackboard. Cheating and plagiarism. Cheating, including plagiarism, will not be tolerated in this class. Any student caught cheating will receive a grade of 0 on that assignment and will be reported to the college. Please keep in mind that plagiarism includes any use of another person's words or ideas without proper citation. And if you have any doubts or suggestions, doubts or questions about what constitutes plagiarism, please see me. Ignorance cannot be used as an excuse. And you're going to get plagiarism materials in that first module. Sorry, this says Canvas, which we have not totally switched to Canvas yet at Miramar. We're still in Blackboard for Module 1. But you can't at the end plagiarize and then say, oh, I didn't realize this was plagiarism. So you want to have a very strong understanding of what plagiarism is. This is our course schedule, which is available on your syllabus. I copied this right from the syllabus. And so basically, it gives you the module number, the dates of the module. So our first module is due on June 24th. We're going to cover an introduction to the class, which is what we're doing right now, an introduction to the Earth and portraying the Earth, which is chapters 1 and 2 of your book. You have exercises 1 through 3 that are due, a plagiarism quiz, and your first quiz. I used to assign a weekly journal in this class, which I am no longer doing. So if in lecture you hear me refer to your weekly journal is due, there is no weekly journal for you guys. I decided to discontinue that assignment. So ignore that. But the syllabus is really clearly laid out. You're going to want to be sure not to fall behind. We move very, very, very fast. Some weeks covering up to 3 chapters of material. If you fall behind, it is really, really hard to catch up in this short, compressed class. And so now I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about what is geography anyways. Most people, when they hear geography, they think of maps. But geography is actually the study of the Earth and the way we interact with it, and much, much more. We do use maps. We love maps, but it's a lot more than that. We use geographic concepts as geographers to look at the world, and I'll go through each one of these on their own, but those concepts are location, space, place, human environment interactions, movement and networks, systems, and scale. Some of these we will use more than others in this class. We're going to look a lot at systems. But what I mean by that, first of all, is location. And we'll talk about location in the beginning of chapters. There's absolute location, such as where you are. If you took a coordinate of longitude and latitude, I could give you your absolute location that pinpointed on the map. And then there's relative location. Where are you in relation to someone else, right? We are in Southern California, which is in relation to Northern California. Geographers also like to think about space, or how things are distributed through space, and I don't mean outer space, but I mean kind of the space of all around us. This is something called the racial dot map, which is not something that we look at in physical geography, but it is something that I look at in some of my other classes, like cultural geography, which, by the way, you may be taking cultural geography with me right now as well, and so you're going to hear an awful lot of my voice this summer. But what this map is showing is the distribution of the racial makeup of Detroit. And so as geographers, we can see that there are some pretty sharp divides between white communities and African American communities. We have a pocket of an Asian community there in the middle of Detroit. And as geographers, we want to know, why is that? What is causing that spatial distribution? The next thing is place, which is my favorite. Place is kind of all of the aspects that go into a specific place. And so we all have these ways that we think of certain places, all these connotations and thoughts about them, and sometimes emotions, right? So if I say to you the South, you are going to have very different ideas about the South, whether or not you grew up in the South or have visited the South. Some people are going to think of Jim Crow and racism, perhaps if they've never been in the South. Some people are going to think of heat. Some people are going to think of really good food, which I've eaten lots of in the South. Other places like San Diego. I moved to San Diego from the Northeast, and everybody pretty much thinks that I'm always on the beach, which I am not. But San Diego kind of has these iconic images of its place that include, things like Balboa Park and the beach. The city is another place that we can think about, which is, for us can hold different connotations whether or not we grew up in a city or not. Home is a place. We have virtual places like Facebook. Facebook is definitely talked about in terms of a place, right? People post things on your wall. Or virtual places like video games, like Skyrim. I don't know anything about Skyrim. I just asked a friend several semesters ago, what is a video game? And that was the one he gave me. But people spend a lot of time creating these virtual places, or places like the ghetto. If I said to you the ghetto, what is the type of connotation, or what kind of images do you come up with there? The next one is human-environment interactions, which we will talk a lot about in this class, particularly when we talk about climate change. And what I mean by human-environment interactions is that we are always affecting the environment, and the environment is always affecting us. So, for example, if we have industrial agriculture, which this is what this is a picture of here, perhaps we're spreading lots of fertilizers. And when we spread lots of fertilizers and then it rains, some of that fertilizer runs off into local waterways, and that causes a growth of algae that's called eutrophication. But you get this big algae bloom that happens. And in turn, from that algae bloom, now a lot of fish die because it takes a lot of the oxygen out of the water that the fish need. And then perhaps that waterway is a spawning ground for fish that are then going to go out to sea. Well, now we've affected fishermen downstream who are relying on those fish for their income. So we are always affecting the environment, and the environment is always affecting us. Movement and networks, which I talk a lot more about in my regional and cultural classes, less so in this class. But as geographers, we're concerned with how do things and people move throughout the environment, why do they move, and how does this shape the connections and separations between places and people. And again, this is not one that we talk about too much in physical geography, but here is a picture of a train going through Mexico from several years ago when we had an influx of unaccompanied minors coming to the United States border. So as geographers, we want to know, how are these people traveling? Why are they traveling? What are the push and pull factors that are bringing them to the United States? And then systems, man, that is the one we're talking a lot about in this class, right? Physical science looks at systems, which includes inputs and outputs and interactions of matters and energy. This is a glacier system. Glaciers are one of the last things that we talk about in this class. But how does this system work? We have material inputs of snow and ice, and material outputs of rock and debris and meltwater. So we're going to talk a lot about systems. We're going to talk about the biosphere and the hydrosphere and the lithosphere, which all of these things you will soon know what they are. And the other thing that geographers are really concerned with is scale. So is something a local phenomenon or a global phenomenon? Is it a state issue or a federal issue? We want to always make sure that we're looking at things at the right scale. So for example, for climate change, solving climate change, that is a global problem, right? Because all of us are contributing to the global emission of greenhouse gases. But the effects of climate change are also often really felt on a local level. So if you are in a low-lying community, you are going to feel those effects of sea level rise pretty darn fast. And so for your first exercise, what you're going to do in this module is you're going to tell me and the rest of your class something about yourself. I want to know why you're taking the class. I want you to list the countries that you have visited. If you have not left the United States, that's totally fine. Lots of my students have not left the United States. Just talk about maybe the most interesting place that you have been, and then why were you there? Were you on vacation? Were you living there? Etc. So good luck. You're going to move on to Module 1 right now and go through that module and tell us a little bit about yourself.